I want to talk to you guys about something that makes us all human, something that's ancient and has influenced our external and internal development as a species, something that each of you experiences every single day in hundreds of different ways. You're so intimate with this thing, you probably haven't even given it much thought. In fact, it's the whole reason this building is even here. I almost skipped ahead. Quick side story. My husband and I took our first camping trip as a couple back when we were dating. And we went up to the mountains in North Carolina to his favorite camping spot, which is pretty remote. So we set up camp and fell asleep. Then in the middle of the night, we heard what sounded like fireworks overhead. It took us about 30 seconds to realize it was in fact a tree falling in the middle of the woods. Aside from conveying how terrifying it was, I want to address the age-old question. When a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, does it make a sound? I want to argue it doesn't. Sound is something that our mind does when vibration enters our brain. It's something we extract from our environment. But I'm no expert psychologist or physicist, so don't quote me on it. Just someone who happens to really love sound, and I'm here to tell you 3 ways that sound drives me as an artist. Sound is music, sound as therapy, and sound as story. My sister and I are only 16 months apart, and our favorite movie growing up was The Sound of Music. No joke. We literally watched it every single day as kids. But my love for music officially started when I was about 5 years old inside of the Hall of Nations at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. It was here the guitar quite literally fell in my lap, and it was love at first sight. My Uncle Kevin taught me my first song, My Sharona, and the rest was history. I went on to study classical guitar from age 6 through high school and eventually decided to pursue a degree of music at the College of Charleston. But before we go on, what is music? Well, you could argue it's a series of sound patterns our brains interpret. But what makes those sound patterns different from, say, tonal patterns of speech? The difference, according to Music, the Brain, and Ecstasy by Robert Jourdain, is because our brains can actually interpret the relationship between those notes and patterns. In other words, a cricket makes and hears sound patterns that tell it where, when, and how to move, whereas a human can make and hear sound patterns as simultaneous melody, rhythm, and harmony. So after graduating college, even though I knew in my heart I wanted to travel abroad, I hightailed it to Austin, Texas, and spent most of my time working in a law firm. However, it was during this time I discovered the healing power of music thanks to my grandmother, Marilyn. Marilyn was the type of woman who ran towards situations most people run away from. She counseled families after Sandy Hook, worked with AIDS patients in the 80s, and lived and served in some of the toughest neighborhoods in Baltimore, Maryland. I've always been inspired by her compassion, her selflessness, and her courage. She inspired me to volunteer as a musician at a hospice home when I lived in Austin. So one day, while I was at the hospice home, they asked me to play for the baptism of a baby. And I'll never forget how when the music started, the crying stopped and the room transformed from one of deep anguish to one of peace and comfort. Since early civilizations like Mesopotamia, Egypt, Israel, and Greek antiquity, music has been used alongside medicine to reduce pain perception, improve mood, promote relaxation, and decrease anxiety. So after about a year of working at the law firm and wrestling with my own mortality, I decided life was way too short, and it was time to listen to my heart and embark on a solo travel adventure abroad. So I bought as close to a one-way ticket to Nicaragua with basically no plan, which I do not endorse. But it turned into a 2-year adventure abroad from Nicaragua to Brazil. And to pay my way during my time in Brazil, I bussed on the streets of Rio. It was the most liberated I'd ever felt, and it was a great way to meet people from all walks of life. I picked up the pandeiro, which is a Brazilian hand drum like tambourine. And most importantly, though, it was during this time abroad I discovered that we're all way more connected than we might realize, and music can help us discover how. In 2020, my travels were halted by a little world event that we all know of as COVID-19. Being stuck at home and having serious travel and human withdrawal, I created Travel Notes, a radio show and podcast that uses music as a medium to explore the ways in which we're all connected. For example, Mississippi Delta blues music has its roots in Malayan kora music. California psychedelic rock in Cambodia? Yeah, that's a thing, thanks to the U.S. Armed Forces radio during Vietnam War. A woman's letters put to music decades later tell her story of her time in a concentration camp in World War II. Calypso music as a form of news and political satire for the oppressed class in Trinidad and Tobago. heavenly a cappella music from the countryside in South Africa that would inspire Nelson Mandela to persevere through imprisonment and help liberate a nation. If you listen closely, the sound of music carries our collective human story and experience. On that note, one particular musical moment served as the catalyst for a completely new perspective on a place I'd known for quite some time, Charleston, South Carolina. Remember the pandero, that tambourine from Brazil? Well, when I got back to Charleston, I missed playing it and found out that they play it in some of the AME churches here. So I went to a service and realized a rhythm I had learned in Brazil works perfectly with a rhythm here known as the gullah clap. It was at that moment it hit me, my travels had come full circle, and I connected the musical and cultural dots between Charleston, West Africa, and Brazil, and hence the idea for Full Circle, my debut album, was born. Creating Full Circle was a journey and adventure in and of itself. It explores the musical and cultural continuities between the Carolina Lowcountry, West Africa, and Brazil, and features over 25 local musicians. We had the opportunity to perform 2 original songs at TEDx, sell out the 2022 Charleston Jazz Fest, and we performed the entire album live for the album release show. It truly was the trip of a lifetime, and after it was over, it dawned on me. With Charleston's cultural connection between West Africa, Brazil, Central America, and the Caribbean, and location as a global port city, it's time we celebrate and showcase international music here in the Holy City. Which is why I'm so excited to announce Charleston's first International Music Festival in the spring of 2025. Stay tuned for more details, and if you want to stay in the loop, you can scan the QR code here. Thank you.